Sol Mudok is the youngest and most feared ruler of the Northern Sea Ice Palace. His beloved Hua was murdered in cold blood by her own father for the sake of dirty political intrigue. Upon learning of the massacre, Sol Mudok set out for revenge. When asked about the reasons for the murder, the girl's father answered bluntly, "The enemy's beloved cannot be left alive." Sol Mudok's face was emotionless as he gazed at the flower of love, which blooms only when two people truly love each other. In memory of the deceased, he planted the entire garden with such flowers. A few days later, against all odds, one of the flowers bloomed again. An old man explained this miracle. The soul of his beloved had reincarnated in another world. Hearing this, Sol Mudok could not hide his surprise. To aid in the search, the old man offered to create a magical artifact stone from the flower. Now the ruler had a great goal, to find Hua in a new life. He immediately set out on a journey by sea, but suddenly his ship was caught in a devastating storm. Doomed to sink, Sol Mudok used his last chance, using his power to freeze the raging sea. At that moment, the necklace made of the flower of love began to glow and pulled him into the depths. Upon regaining consciousness, Sol Mudok found himself in a forest in the distant central plains. The asshole hears a scream and decides to check what's going on outside. Giant flies are terrorizing the locals. People are running away in panic. The girl shields the child with her body. Death is already breathing down their necks. The man with the cleaver tries to act like a hero, but he himself is shaking with fear. A sudden burst of energy blows the monsters to smithereens. Eyewitnesses are shocked. It looks like a first-class carriage has arrived. A mysterious stranger appears dramatically from a cloud of dust. Mudok realizes that he has been carried into a forest in the central plains. The hero notices something strange and takes a closer look at the survivors. Seeing foreigners, Mudok realizes that he is very far from home. Mudok is attacked by giant, overgrown flies. The guy is shocked by the size of the local insects. The hero realizes that he has found himself on the central plains among foreigners. The asshole remains calm in the face of danger. He uses divine ice shot, freezing the monster in midair. The insect breaks into small ice fragments. The asshole is furious that the pathetic little bug dared to attack him. The Lord of the North does not intend to forgive such insolence. In one volley, it destroys the remaining swarm of pests. Stunned onlookers watch the stranger's power. Eyewitnesses are shocked by what they saw. This is impossible. The asshole is dissatisfied. He doesn't understand their foreign babble. Guildmaster Edmund Royal tries to introduce himself. To Mudok, it's just noise. The old man thanks for saving him and asks for the name of the swordsman mage. Mudok is confused. He calls their speech colored-eyed dialect. Deathly silence. The language barrier is a fiasco. The caravan's members are panicking. They can't reach an agreement with their savior. Mudok doesn't believe that no one in the Central Plains knows his language. The merchant is trying to find a way out of the situation. He needs to explain himself in simple terms. The guild leader hands over a ring. It looks like a magical artifact for translation. Edmund activates the ring's magic for instant translation. The merchant poses cringefully while the artifact reads the new language. Sol Mudok is shocked by his grandfather's strange dancing. The magic worked. Now they understand each other. The guild leader confirms the ring taught him the language of the Central Plains. The merchant, Edmund Roel, thanks for saving him and asks for the name of the magic swordsman. Sol Mudok introduces himself but has no idea who the magical swordsman is. Edmund explains, "These are those who use sword and magic at the same time." The idiot genuinely doesn't understand what magic is. The old man is out of his mind. The guild is in a stupor. The guy just threw ice in packs and doesn't know the word magic. The old man is shocked by Mudok's power. The hero merely asks what he's talking about. Grandfather tries to find the words, and Mudok is seething from the slowness. Patience is running out. The Ice Lord demands quick answers, threatening the poor fellow with magic. The old man is sure that he has met a psychopath and decides to explain everything to be on the safe side. The grandfather prays for peace and agrees to lay everything out as it is. Evening had fallen. The tension in the forest had eased somewhat. The asshole is confused. In this world, technology is called some kind of magic. It turns out that the grandfather himself does not understand where these central plains are located. The asshole is stunned. Hwa-Young's search plan fails at the start. It's completely absurd. They both have no idea where they're headed. The asshole thinks it's crazy that the locals don't know about the Central Plains. The old man calls him crazy. The old man explains, they are in the forest of the Drake Kingdom, not on the plains. Mudok brazenly demands clarification. The hero is certain the old man is delirious, having never heard of Drake. The mutual insults continue. The old man is seriously concerned for his savior's sanity. The jerk is shocked by what he hears. To resolve the dispute, Mudok notices a guy in the bushes and decides to interrogate him. It turns out the guy is Leo. The jerk demands a clear answer from the kid about where they are. The hero poses the question bluntly, the Central Plains or Drake? Leo is completely stupefied. The asshole gets angry because of the silence, but the old man explains the guy simply doesn't understand his language. The old man takes out a magic translator ring. He feels sorry to waste expensive magic on a psycho, but he does not intend to tolerate the status of a feeble-minded old man. Sol Mudok receives a translator ring from the old man. The artifact's magic is activated, enveloping the hero in streams of symbols. Now Mudok understands the local language. This spell seems incredible to him. The hero asks the boy's name. He introduces himself as Leo. Mudok asks where he is, in the Central Plains or in Drake. The boy is confused. It turns out that this is the path to Barkon, the capital of the Drake Kingdom. The locals are shocked by Mudok's questions and jokingly ask if he has dementia. The asshole suspects a trick, but the old man swears that everyone in the guild will confirm his words. It dawns on the hero, he is definitely not in the Central Plains. The asshole is out of it. The situation takes an unexpected turn. The asshole fought the storm on a sinking ship until the very end. He woke up in some carriage completely confused. The hero is shocked. Was he really thrown into space? The asshole looks around the fire, trying to figure out where he ended up. A cold look and an attempt to maintain composure in an alien world. A sudden flash of pain in the Dantian area takes him by surprise. A strange feeling in the center of power as the old man interrogates him. The flower artifact is once again giving signs, reacting to the new reality. The asshole understands that something is clearly wrong with his body or magic. He doesn't care about the questions. He suddenly takes off and walks into the night. The asshole flies into the forest at breakneck speed, chasing a strange sensation that literally pulls him forward. The hero is shocked. The energy here is pure and completely different from what he is used to in the Middle Plains. For a moment, everything freezes, and then a powerful pillar of light pierces the night sky, marking the beginning of the transformation. The asshole breaks into a scream. His body can barely contain the onslaught of colossal power bursting forth. A veritable explosion of power. Streams of energy envelop the hero, causing him to literally glow in the darkness. The result was impressive. The amount of chi in his Danshin immediately doubled. What a buff! While Mudok is coming to his senses, the main question haunts him. How did he end up here in the first place? A sudden click in his head. His gaze falls on the pendant, which has begun to behave extremely suspiciously. The necklace flashes with a scarlet light. It seems this artifact acted as a spatial navigator. Mudok recalls Hwayoung's words. This gift always returns to the one who gave it. Could she really be nearby? Mudok feels a powerful resonance from the artifact. Hwayoung's reincarnation is somewhere very close. The hero returns to the fire, where he is met with a harsh interrogation. Where the hell have you been? Mudok maintains an icy calm, appearing dramatically before the squad in his new guise. He skillfully avoids answering, but his strange smile makes his companions tense up considerably. The swordsman decides to clarify the situation and checks whether this is really the Drake Kingdom. The old man confirms. They are on their way to Barkon, the capital of these lands, which Mudok has never heard of. Little Leo decides that he is looking at a typical mountain hermit who doesn't know anything about geography. The asshole decides not to be caught and plays along, confirming the legend about long training sessions in the mountains. The hero's mind doesn't fit together. Neither Drake nor Barkon ever existed in his past world. Mudok understands that he is in the land of Western barbarians, and young Leo is already eager to teach the legendary master the local customs. Mudok decides not to waste time and follows the group in order to quickly get out of this wilderness. A curious boy named Luffy tries to find out the name of our sullen master. The old man is shocked by Mudok's sudden change of mood. This guy is clearly a dark horse. At night, the hero studies the map and realizes that the local language and geography have nothing in common with his homeland. Shock content. Asshole realizes that he is not just in another country, but in a completely different world. The strange letters and alien terrain confirm that the laws of the Central Plains no longer apply here. It turns out that this world is chock full of fantasy races, from sharp-sighted elves to stern dwarves. Beastmen are in on the action too. The diversity of creatures here is simply off the charts, and each requires a unique approach. At the top of the food chain are dragons, true flying disasters that are best avoided. Luffy tells stories about teleportation magic, while Mudok tries to digest all this crazy lore. While Mudok gets used to his new surroundings, Luffy enthusiastically tells him about the incredible wonders of this universe. The hero's reaction was not long in coming. He notices something that leaves the Swordmaster stupefied. THRE moons? The sky of this world finally proves to Mudok that he is infinitely far from home. But instead of fear, a predatory grin appears on the protagonist's face. The challenge is accepted. It will definitely not be boring. He clutches Hua Young's artifact, wondering if she really is waiting for him here. The sudden idyll is interrupted by a furious cry from the thicket. The peaceful night is cancelled. The asshole instantly concentrates, as his senses have detected a serious threat nearby. Without wasting a second, the master takes off in the direction of the noise, ready to test the locals' mettle. A drama is unfolding ahead. A frightened blonde with a wild look is clearly cornered. A girl named Sabina is holding a hostage and threatening to kill everyone. Looks like it's time for the first heroic intervention. The companions try to calm Sabina, promising to find magicians in the capital, but the girl is in complete despair. It turns out the poor things were infected with assassin bug eggs, which could rip their hearts out from the inside at any moment. Sabina's companion, Charles, falls into a stupor. He understands that the chances of salvation are almost zero. The girl is hysterical. If the larvae hatch, they and little Annie will simply be torn to pieces. Sabina raises her dagger. She wants to kill herself and the child quickly, just to avoid a painful death. Stop! A cold voice cuts through the night silence, and our hero, Sol Mudok, bursts into action. The legendary swordsman declares that he will heal them and orders them to put down their weapons immediately. The asshole moves so quickly that Sabina doesn't even have time to notice how he ended up next to her. The old man is shocked. Does the swordsman really possess healing magic? But Mudok simply knows the ways of his world. The hero tells everyone to calm down. Will the swordmaster be able to defeat the magical parasites? Find out right now. Grandfather begs Sol Mudok to save the children, and our hero decides to help simply out of the kindness of his heart. The swordmaster begins his work and asks everyone to step back so as not to interfere with the healing process. The crowd obediently backs away, while Mudok pathetically makes his way towards the infected girls. He tells Sabina and Annie not to be nervous. Everything will go quickly and almost painlessly. The girls obediently close their eyes, completely entrusting their lives to the mysterious stranger. So Mudok turns on magical vision, literally shining through the bodies of the poor things, like a living X-ray. He recalls that the eggs of these creepy parasitic insects usually attach themselves right near the heart. Mudok places his palms on their backs, concentrating his mana to test his guess. The hero's gaze becomes extremely serious. He has felt something suspicious inside. Target acquired. The asshole finds parasites in the pulsating hearts, but how will he get them without killing the girls? The asshole concentrates his inner strength, preparing for the delicate work of cleansing the hostages' bodies of parasites. With the help of magical vision, he sees that the insect eggs have not yet hatched and killed the hosts. The hero masterfully adjusts the flow of energy to incinerate the infection without damaging vital organs. A blinding flash engulfs the girls' hearts, instantly destroying the killer beetle larvae with a powerful magical pulse. Sabina and Annie come to, breathing heavily after the risky procedure and realizing their miraculous survival. The asshole remains completely calm, convinced that his plan worked perfectly and the threat to life has passed. The former ruler confirms to the stunned girls that they are now completely free from the influence of the deadly insects. The old man and the other survivors cannot believe their eyes, celebrating an incredible victory over certain death. Grandfather thanks the magic swordsman, who, in one fell swoop, solved a problem that seemed like a death sentence to everyone else. Mudok finally calms the rescued, guaranteeing the absence of any side effects from his crude but effective magic. The rescued girls shower Mudok with sincere gratitude, calling him their true savior. The entire group of refugees bows deeply before the magic swordsman for the life he gave them. Mudok thoughtfully clutches his amulet, maintaining complete calm amidst the general jubilation. A lonely hero looks up at the night sky with 3 moons, hoping to soon meet someone important. At dawn, the caravan sets out along a picturesque road leading to a majestic castle on the horizon. The daytime heat quickly exhausts the travelers, causing the old man to literally sweat under the heavy load. Even the imperturbable Mudok begins to feel discomfort from the unbearable heat that has replaced the coolness of the night. The caring boy hands the hero a flask of water, trying to somehow repay his kindness. The sip turns out to be a disappointment, because during the journey the water in the flask has managed to warm up considerably. The asshole solves the problem in one move, using his cold energy to instantly freeze the drink. The heat on the way to the capital is unbearable, and the nameless boy is genuinely worried about Sol Mudok's condition. The boy notices a strange sound coming from the swordsman's flask, but immediately jumps back from the scorching cold of the vessel. Sol Mudok grins and hands over an ice-cold flask, offering the boy a little refreshment on this hot day. Without thinking, the guy takes a greedy sip and freezes from the unexpected effect of the magical water. Instead of warm liquid, real liquid ice flows down the throat, instantly knocking out the last of the fatigue. The boy literally glows with happiness and delight, feeling a powerful surge of energy and coolness. The former ruler of the ice palace is pleased with the effect, as his internal energy works better than any air conditioner. Amazed by such a miracle, the boy jumps up and addresses the hero as a true great master. His eyes shining, he holds out his flask and tearfully begs Mudok to do the same freezing trick. Remembering the invaluable help of this fellow, the swordsman decides to repay with kindness and agrees to a little ice magic. Mudok uses ice magic with a light touch, turning ordinary water into an icy escape from the sweltering heat. The boy is absolutely delighted with such a gift, and the swordsman just calmly watches his sincere joy. The magical aura attracts the attention of the other companions, who stand frozen in mute amazement at the miracle they have seen. All the empty flasks instantly appear in front of Mudok, because everyone wants a sip of coolness in this sultry hell. The children look at the hero with shining eyes, begging Mr. Magic Swordsman to create some more ice water. The protagonist understands that such a simple request could result in unnecessary attention and new problems for him. While Mudok is pondering his answer, one of the adults abruptly interrupts the general joy with his intervention. Mr. Edmund demands an immediate explanation, not understanding what strange fuss has arisen among his charges. The boy proudly shows off his ice flask, leaving the old man literally speechless. Edmund is shocked to realize the true power of their companion, realizing that before them is not just a mercenary, but a great master. One of the travelers asks Sol Mudok to pay attention to his flask as well. The main character looks at the people around him in slight confusion. The asshole agrees to help and asks the old man to pass him a container of water. The hero decides to cool their water in gratitude for helping them overcome the language barrier. The old man showers himself with gratitude and begins to greedily drink the ice-cold water. After taking a sip, the man suddenly freezes, feeling something strange. The old man, perplexed, asks Mr. Magic Swordsman how exactly he created this ice. The traveler's face shows extreme shock from the realization of the quality of magic. He shouts in delight that this is the most delicious ice he has tasted on the entire continent. The old man acknowledges Mudok's skill as divine, while Mudok is surprised by such a reaction to the ordinary taste of ice. Sol Mudok is puzzled as to why ordinary frozen water would cause such a reaction, and asks what the old man means by a different taste. The hero thoughtfully analyzes the situation, beginning to realize the value of his abilities in this world. Observing the wild delight of those around him over simple ice, Sol Mudok notes to himself that he even feels a little sorry for these people. In a good mood, the former ruler decides to use his cold magic once again. The hero is addressed as Mr. Magic Swordsman, to which he responds briefly without looking up from his work. The old man points ecstatically to the sky, celebrating his incredible luck and the acquisition of such a valuable resource. The action moves to an urban location several days later. There is a bustle in the store. A worker orders others to carry the load carefully to the far end of the room. Sol Mudok uses his power to instantly fill the vats placed before him with cold. As a result of the hero's work, the store is filled to the brim with buckets of pure, sparkling ice. A group of mercenaries are in awe of Sol Mudok's skill, calling him an outstanding magical swordsman. Sol Mudok maintains a cool calm as Edmund urges his men to work faster. The protagonist turns around abruptly, clearly surprised or outraged by the interlocutor's words. Sol Mudok asks the old man directly if he really wants to restore the guild's business by selling the ice he created. The hero understands Edmund's hidden motives, who praise his magic only for the sake of profit in a niche market. Sol Mudok decides not to work for free and sets a strict condition for the deal. 70% of the proceeds go to him, 30% to the guild. The stunned old man mentally calculates that even under such conditions, high-quality ice will bring in huge profits. The greedy merchant decides not to give up right away and tries to bargain with the magician a little more. Edmund begins to list the enormous expenses for wagons, workers, and mages to guard the cargo. Begging for leniency, the old man knocks out a 40% share, to which Sol Mudok responds with a barely noticeable grin. Old man Edmund is in complete shock at how easily Sol Mudok gets things done. Satisfied with the terms, the guild representative extends his hand, offering to formally enter into a contract. Sol Mudok agrees to the deal, considering this place ideal for exploring the new world. The hero notices that things are going even better in the sales area than he initially expected. Suddenly, a messenger rushes into the building, hastily searching for Mr. Edmund. Sol Mudok and the merchant turn around at the noise, wondering what could have caused such a commotion. A huge crowd of people gathers outside the building, attracted by rumors about the product. People shout that they have come for lollipops and ice, wanting to make deals with the guild. A stunned Edmund tries to calm the crowd, calling on everyone to stand in an orderly line. But the crowd is so excited that they don't even try to listen to the merchant's excuses. Sol Mudok uses mental magic, commanding the crowd to be silent directly into their heads. People are horrified to realize that before them stands a legendary and dangerous magical swordsman. The protagonist appears before the assembled crowd, displaying a cold calm and an overwhelming aura. The asshole sternly warns, anyone who continues to make noise will be immediately thrown out. The suppressed crowd instantly pacifies, agreeing to submit to the demands of the mysterious master. The most dissatisfied grumble that they have traveled a long way in vain, trying to beg for at least a little bit of goods. One icy glance from the hero is enough to make the impudent petitioners cry out in fear. Disappointed traders leave in a hurry, lamenting the wasted time and lack of profit. Sol Mudok bids farewell to those leaving and invites the remaining important guests to take their seats. Representatives of trade guilds and noble families begin to formally introduce themselves to the hero for serious negotiations. Edmund is delighted. He knew he would make money, but he didn't expect such stunning luck. The old man admits that it was only thanks to the magic swordsman that the guild had a chance of fully recovering. Edmund offers the hero to finally rest, promising to take all the remaining business concerns upon himself. Sol Mudok agrees, wishes his partner luck, and leaves the room. Left alone, Edmund watches the swordsman with a serious look, plunging into heavy memories. A picture of the past appears before the old man's eyes, a destroyed guild, blood, and the bodies of his comrades on the floor. He vows to restore the Merchant Guild to take revenge on Duke Isurus and the Akasa Guild for the massacre they committed. Edmund's eyes are blazing with rage. He will not stop until retribution is met. A tired Sol Mudok falls onto the bed, promising himself to repay Edmund if his plan succeeds. With money flowing like a river, the hero now intends to focus on gathering information about the search for Wai Young. Someone knocks on Sol Mudok's room, and when he asks who's there, the girl answers that it's Sabina. The hero amiably invites the guest to come inside. A smiling Sabina appears in the doorway with a deep bowl in her hands. It turns out she brought ice cream, her favorite snack lately. This ice and fruit dish was invented by Sabina herself, whom Sol Mudok recently met. The girl places the treat on the table and wishes the hero bon appetit. The jerk decides to try a piece of an unusual dessert. The taste turns out to be cold and juicy. The hero could not have imagined such a thing when he lived in the North Sea. After tasting the delicacy, he understands why the Royal Trading Guild has become so popular. However, suddenly Sol Mudok cries out in surprise. Sol Mudok finishes his portion and realizes that one is clearly not enough for him. The protagonist decides to go get more himself, since all the other employees of the trading guild are busy. Approaching the shop, he hears a noise and sees Sabina asking the impudent customers to stand in line. One of the men becomes furious that a simple girl dares to tell him what to do. It turns out that the uninvited guests are arrogant aristocrats, outraged by the order of some girl. Threatening with consequences, the nobleman demands that the ice cream be brought to him immediately, without waiting in line. The aristocrat points his finger at Sabina's face, threatening reprisals if the dessert turns out to be tasteless. Despite requests to maintain order, the man shouts that he will not stand in the same row with commoners. The aristocrats continue to hurl insults and death threats, while Sol Mudok watches silently. Sabina boldly replies that her ice cream is not intended for those who push forward just because of the title. Sabina hopes for the swordsman's protection, but at the same time she is outraged by the aristocrats' insolence and does not want to give in to them. One of the nobles, Samuel, is enraged by the insolence of a simple girl and begins to boil. An enraged Samuel draws his sword, declaring that Sabina must really want to die. Another man places his hand on Samuel's shoulder, stopping him and quietly saying his name. He asks Sabina if she wants to humiliate them while a frightened Samuel apologizes to him. The girl freezes in surprise and fear when the mysterious man addresses her. A stranger with a frightening look declares that they came here just to eat ice cream. Sabina feels her heart freeze under that heavy, cold gaze. The man demands that his order be brought to him immediately, as he really doesn't like waiting. Sabina, trembling with horror, asks to wait while Sol Mudok watches this frightening scene. The guild representative angrily declares that the Roll Trading Guild does not sell ice cream to hooligans. An older man scolds a frightened Sabina, asking if she has forgotten this rule, while the group leader watches silently. The stranger calmly notes that something clearly happened between Sabina and the aristocrats, since they are reacting so violently. The angry old man demands that the uninvited guests leave the place immediately, declaring that violating the guild rules is unacceptable. The aristocrats are enraged by such a reception, considering the old man's words a direct insult to their class. The leader's comrades look at each other in bewilderment as the situation escalates to the limit. The leader of the group of aristocrats, with icy calm, demands to know the real reason for this attitude. The old man comes close to him and boldly replies, "Ask Duke Icarus about this yourself." The name of Duke Icarus causes real shock and whispers among everyone present in the square. The stunned leader of the group's face changes and asks in confusion, "How do you know my father?" The enemy looks closely at his opponent, noticing something frighteningly familiar about him. The aristocrat falls into a stupor, struck by the sight of his opponent's eyes. The group's leader realizes that before him is a representative of the powerful fallen guild, Roel. The villain is horrified to recognize that same creepy smile that appears on Justin when he is furious. The guild representative draws his blade and pronounces sentence, "Death is the penalty for the crime." He strikes with his sword in a swift motion, leaving no time to think. Suddenly, a magical swordsman appears and blocks the attack, saving the aristocrat from death. The unknown defender expresses obvious dissatisfaction with the attacker's audacity. The swordsman complains that he just wanted to eat ice cream, but ended up getting into a fight. He makes fun of the situation. A rowdy customer was denied dessert, and in response, he decided to kill everyone. The aristocrat arrogantly declares that the children present have no manners and promises to teach them a harsh lesson. The enemy draws his sword in a rage, which is enveloped in a powerful purple magical aura. With a mad grin, the attacker makes a sharp lunge, shouting that the target will die along with its defender. The white-haired swordsman calmly blocks the blow flying from above, letting the enemy get closer. The defender mockingly remarks how scared he is and begins to demonstrate incredible speed, creating numerous afterimages. The magical swordsman easily dodges all the swings and lectures him on how unprincipled aristocrats have no honor. The white-haired warrior declares that he is not a stupid man and therefore will personally take charge of the education and manners of his impudent opponent. The aristocrat falls into an indescribable rage that someone dared to speak so dismissively of his class. The stranger instantly appears behind the enemy, claiming that only strict discipline is needed to teach respect. Sol Mudok watches the scene closely, noting that the scene reminds him of the Central Plains. Sol Mudok admits that because of his longing for Huaiyang, he completely forgot how this world works. The white-haired warrior uses the formless chi technique, delivering a swift blow to the enemy. The attacker tries to block the attack with his blade at the last moment, but to no avail. The aristocrat falls to his knees, clutching his bloody wrist in horror and realizing the severity of the wound. An unknown master with an icy gaze and glowing eyes looks at the defeated enemy. The swordsman slowly makes his way towards his target, while the aristocrat's frightened retinue tries to bring him back to his senses. The guards panic and draw their swords, threatening to stab the warrior if he takes another step. Despite the trembling warnings and threats, the master continues his frighteningly calm forward movement. Sol Mudok, carefully observing what is happening from the side, only briefly and interestedly says, "Ho-oh, oh." The tension in the square reaches its peak when a mysterious force begins to literally vibrate in the air. The angry aristocrat rudely demands that he get out of the way, while his frightened companion tries to reason with him. The white-haired warrior watches the scene with a smirk as the magical pressure builds around him. The mysterious master grins, his eyes flashing brightly in anticipation of the fight. The warrior folds his fingers into a fighting gesture, concentrating powerful streams of blue energy. The master challenges his opponent to see how long he can withstand his strength. The instant attack hits its target, seriously damaging the opponent's arm and causing his face to distort in shock. The white-haired man stands surrounded by guards, while one of the attackers is thrown aside. The companion runs up to the wounded aristocrat in horror, begging him to come to his senses. A terrible, bloody mark in the shape of a rotating vortex appears on the victim's wrist. Sol Mudok calmly notes that his opponent couldn't withstand even one blow from the mysterious master. The white-haired master notes that his opponent was too weak and wonders whether he should continue the fight. The hero admits that he knows nothing about this world and therefore cannot afford to simply kill people. As the master leaves, the wounded Justin shouts angrily at his back, demanding to know who he is. The aristocrat becomes hysterical, outraged at how a commoner dared to treat him. Justin von Icarus, like that. The white-haired warrior calls his opponent an idiot, believing that he is completely incapable of assessing the situation sensibly. For a moment, a cold determination flashes in the master's eyes, and the thought flashes, maybe I should just kill him? He immediately dismisses the idea, not wanting to become like his enemies while the aristocrat continues to make threats. Deciding not to use magic, the hero looks for an ordinary wooden stick as a suitable weapon. The master shows the branch with a grin, calling it ironically a thing taken from the void. A shocked Justin doesn't understand what happened and, in horror, assumes that he is facing a real, magical swordsman. The white-haired master declares the power of the sword, concentrating a powerful aura around himself. The hero demonstrates a sword of verification, which, in fact, turns out to be an ordinary wooden stick. Justin and his companions are stunned by the crushing gap in power. The master delivers a swift blow with a stick, literally driving opponents into the ground. With a mad smile, the warrior continues his execution, demanding that his opponents put their brains back in place. The defeated aristocrats beg for mercy, admitting that they were fundamentally wrong. The master puts his hand to his ear, mockingly declaring that he does not hear their excuses at all. Justin is horrified to realize that this man is capable of the most brutal reprisal without a shadow of a doubt. The aristocrat screams hysterically about his repentance, promising never to make such mistakes again. The hero notes the effectiveness of the club with satisfaction and tells the defeated enemies to be more careful in the future. The townspeople watch in shock, whispering about the incredible skill of the magic swordsman. The white-haired warrior leaves to the cries of gratitude of the rescued residents, throwing his stick over his shoulder. The action moves to a majestic, bright castle with high spires where a calm atmosphere reigns. An official meeting of dignitaries and advisors is taking place in the luxurious throne room. Count Slave reports to the king on a fresh report from his subordinate in the Kingdom of Serbia. King Tomalov III listens attentively to the report, sitting majestically on his throne. The count reports that Serbia has reclaimed the Blackstone region, and the Kingdom of Hyzen is reclaiming the lands beyond the Saraha Desert. Duke Sergio von Icarus expresses concern about the monsters and asks about the measures the kingdom is taking. Slave adds that the neighbors are probably trying to lure a certain Ainos to their place. Upon hearing the name Ainos, King Tomalov III's face suddenly changes and he goes into shock. Count Krenz, in a cold sweat, asks again if this is true, while the other aristocrats maintain a gloomy silence. The face of one of the rulers present is distorted by tension and sweat. Baron Arista is perplexed and asks if he is referring to Ainos, one of the continent's 10 great swordmasters. Viewers are reminded that this mysterious swordsman always rejected any money offered to him. The aristocrat panics and explains that the master is always wandering around the continent and does not understand why he came to Hyzen. Count Krenz suggests that if it's not about money, then perhaps the swordmaster has a lover. A close-up of the ruler's tense eyes, realizing the gravity of the situation. Count Krenz cries out again, "Is it true?" to which he receives only a short, "What?" in response. A question is asked in the hall about the identity of the woman the master loves, and the answer is shocking. Everyone knows her. Finally, the name of the one for whom the sword master could have come to the city is heard. It is Princess Daphne. The council discusses disturbing news. If the rumors are true, the Kingdom of Hyzen now has 2 swordmasters. The king analyzes a map where his neighbors are expanding their territories and asks his subjects what they should do in this situation. The council members agree that they too need expansion, but there are simply no free lands left to conquer. Attention falls to the north, but these lands are useless. They are bound by ice and a harsh climate. Despite the difficulties, the thought is that sooner or later, someone will have to be sent north to expand the borders. Seeing no other way out, the king announces the end of today's meeting until next time. In the shadow of palace intrigue, someone is closely watching the actions of the count and his highness. Later, the king and Cotton hold a secret meeting behind closed doors by candlelight. The king suspiciously asks Cotton if he's made any mistakes lately. The monarch complains about the duke's selfishness, who has been exiling the rebels to the north for 10 years, and admits his guilt. The king asks Cotton not to belittle himself, calling him the only subordinate he can completely trust. Cotton, showing deep respect, humbly accepts the words of his ruler. The king changes the subject and asks Cotton if he has heard about the appearance of ice cream in the capital. The assistant explains, this delicacy is called the lollipop of the Roll Trade Guild because of its incredible sweetness. The interested monarch clarifies the opening hours of the guild's store. Noticing the king's interest, Cotton suggests that they immediately look into Roel before it's time to sleep. The anticipation of a sweet dessert brings a satisfied and anticipatory smile to the king. Tamalov III praises Cotton for his insight and ability to always guess his true desires. Beaming with joy, the king eagerly asks when exactly they plan to make this sudden visit. 3 moons shine over the city, immersed in sleep, as the heroes prepare for their sortie. The children rush to the hero with an enthusiastic cry, "Magic swordsman, teach us." Caught off guard, Sol Mudak freezes with a spoonful of ice cream in his mouth, asking in bewilderment, "What?" The girl apologizes for the abrupt intrusion, admitting that not everyone is capable of mastering magic. The little girl begs for training, hoping to become useful if the guild is ever in danger again. The hero puts down his dessert and gently explains that he is not a wizard at all, and his power is not magic. The boy recalls the master's previous words, guessing that he uses martial arts. Sol Mudak displays ice energy in his hand, officially introducing the divine ice shot technique. The master admits that he doesn't know magic, to which the guy immediately offers to teach them martial arts. Sol Mudak is stunned by such impudence, trying to object to their sudden proposal. But the children are unstoppable. They are delighted to decide to learn hand-to-hand combat. The children and the girl surround Sol Mudak, enthusiastically begging Mr. Swordsman to teach them his techniques. A boy with a scar on his face looks at the hero with eyes burning with anticipation. A small student in traditional dress screams at the top of his lungs, demanding to be shown martial arts. Sol Mudak realizes that these children, despite their appearance, sincerely want to learn how to protect someone. The hero is confused. The rules prohibit teaching North Sea techniques, but this is a completely different world. The girl from the guild happily informs the children that the mentor is ready to give them his answer. The orphans are overjoyed and promise to never forget the master's kindness until their death. Sol Mudak is shocked by this reaction and tries to stop the sudden celebration. While the hero is trying to get a word in, the children are already overjoyed and dreaming of becoming just as strong. In the end, the noisy crowd simply leaves, wishing the master good night and leaving him completely alone. Sol Mudak recalls his childhood and sympathizes with the teacher who clearly had a hard time with him. The hero is distracted by thoughts about the children when he suddenly hears a strange noise. The asshole is unhappy that the clanking of iron at such a late hour is preventing him from resting peacefully. The sounds of a fierce battle can be heard from the forest thicket near the city. A bloody battle takes place in the forest, where one of the fighters is seriously wounded. The wounded defenders are trying their best to hold out until reinforcements arrive. One of the fighters laments that a routine walk for ice cream turned into a surprise attack. The defender is shocked to see a new threat in front of him. The hooded opponent shouts the name of the technique, fire breath, and releases balls of flame. A powerful fiery explosion engulfs everything around, leaving no chance for salvation. One of the defenders screams out the name Cotton in panic as he sees the scale of the disaster unfolding. The wounded swordsman tries to remain calm, replying that he is fine. His comrade points out in horror that the fighter's arm is seriously injured. The swordsman apologizes for his rudeness due to the haste as the defenders try to regroup under the night sky. He realizes that among the attackers was a wizard, whom he did not notice because of his similar clothing. The attacker's commander gives a brutal order to leave no one alive, receiving clear confirmation from his men. One of the masked killers declares that he will personally wring the neck of the noble cur when he enters the battle. The guild swordsman performs a circular attack, fending off enemies surrounding him amidst the forest fire. With lightning-fast swings of his blade, the defender cuts his way through the ranks of his opponents. In the heat of battle, the swordsman asks about someone's fate, to which the assassin replies that he will soon die. The number of enemies is growing. Their number has increased significantly due to the use of magic. The commander calls for His Highness to be protected at any cost, knowing that defeat in this battle will be the end. A masked enemy mows down ranks of allies with a magical attack, causing panic among the defenders. The squad leader commands to immediately group together to protect the master from flying spells. The enemy mage unleashes a devastating fire breath, declaring that it is too late to save himself. A sudden, powerful blast of ice or light energy interrupts the mage's attack, crushing him on the spot. The attackers freeze in shock when their comrade suddenly falls dead from a mysterious intervention. The guild's defenders look at what is happening with utter amazement, not understanding who has come to their aid. One of the killers realizes he has fallen into a trap when the figure of a hero appears in front of him from the glow. Sol Mudak, with an icy grin, instantly deals with the enemy, demonstrating his overwhelming superiority in battle. The enemy looks around in confusion, not understanding at what point Sol Mudak managed to close the distance so quickly. The protagonist suddenly appears right in front of the enemy and offers to finish the fight quickly before his ice cream melts. The killer is furious and realizes that he only let the unusual guy out of his sight for a second, and now he can't relax. The attackers try to remain calm, counting on their numerical superiority against a single opponent. The leader decides that he needs to quickly kill the king and leave, but his attention is drawn to Sol Mudok's unusual sword. Commanding his allies to finish off Tomalov, the leader of the attackers himself rushes into the attack on the protagonist. Sol Mudok, with a frightening smile, decides to demonstrate to the enemy the new product of the ice palace of the North Sea, the blade Solon. By provoking the enemy to attack first, the hero maintains complete composure, while the killer completely loses his composure. The enemy jumps and delivers a powerful blow with two swords, shouting that the hero will not get out of here alive. Sol Mudok only smirked contentedly, accepting the challenge and preparing to strike back with his ice blade. The enemy cries out in rage, "Is this how you attack?" as he faces Sol Mudok's icy might. Chapter 10, Ice Cream Resentment. Sol Mudok stands in the night forest, preparing for a serious confrontation. The enemy makes a swift lunge, but Sol Mudok calmly blocks a series of blows with ice blades. The killer makes a sharp maneuver with his hand, trying to seize the initiative in close combat. The opponent crosses his blades behind his back, concentrating energy for a powerful technique. The killer, in a rage, calls the hero a rat and delivers a sweeping blow from top to bottom. Sol Mudok makes a lightning-fast dash upward, dodging the attack and creating a bright flash of icy energy. The leader of the attackers breathes heavily, realizing that the battle is not going according to his plan. Sol Mudok raises his sword Solon with icy calm, preparing to deliver the decisive blow. An intense exchange of blows begins, in which the hero's icy steel clashes with the enemy's weapon again and again. Sol Mudok delivers a powerful blow from above, literally driving the opponent into the ground. A blast of icy energy blinds enemies as the hero rapidly attacks from multiple sides. In the pouring rain, Sol Mudok stands still, holding his ice blade at the ready. Slave asks His Highness to step back, noticing something frightening ahead. The surrounding people watch in shock as the incredible force unfolds right before them. Tomalov froze in bewilderment, not understanding what kind of monster was in front of him. The attackers are horrified to realize that they are facing a true master of the sword. Sol Mudok confidently walks towards the remaining killers, not giving them a chance to escape. Shrouded in a battle aura, the hero turns furiously towards his opponents. In anger, Sol Mudok shouts that it was because of them that his ice cream melted in the rain. Against the backdrop of the rain, a weeping spirit hovers in the form of a cloud with a halo, mourning a plate of melted ice cream. The killers in bone masks look at each other in complete confusion, not understanding what kind of ice cream they are talking about. Sol Mudok, beside himself with rage, clenches his teeth, preparing to unleash his full might on his enemies. The protagonist makes a swift dash, flying through the line of attackers and attacking them with an ice sword. The killer is horrified to realize that Sol Mudok has used the energy spirit defense technique, creating an impenetrable barrier. With a powerful circular strike, the swordmaster literally tears his opponents apart among the ice shards. His Highness's guards watch in shock at Sol Mudok's incredible power, not believing their eyes. Sol Mudok dramatically puts away his sword, coldly stating that the enemy has been defeated and revenge has been accomplished. The affected companions see only the master's retreating silhouette and a bright flash of energy. Slave and his partner look after the departed hero, realizing that he simply left the battlefield. His Highness gives Slave 1 hour while he remains in complete shock from what he has seen. The slave, clenching his bloody fist, resolutely asks the ruler to entrust this matter to him. In another location, a man at a table is extremely surprised by the news that someone is learning magic. The interlocutor confirms the fact of training, although the old man doubts that magic can be learned independently. The old man looks thoughtfully and intently at the details of the case. The red-haired guy admits that, like many in the Merchants Guild, he also dreams of studying magic. The old man suddenly begins to laugh ominously and loudly, frightening the young man. Having calmed down, the old man admits that the boy is right, noting that the mentor is already having a hard time due to the abundance of work. He adds that few people in the world are given the opportunity to truly experience magic, and these children are very lucky. The old man suddenly jumps up and demands to be shown immediately the place where the children practice magic. The guild leader is gleefully anticipating that the day of their takeoff will come much earlier than expected. The swordswoman is outraged by the nonsense she heard, but the old man assures her that he is in complete control of the situation. She doesn't understand the gist of the conversation until the old man says, "The magic swordsman is now teaching magic to children." The protagonist realizes that these are the very rumors that were spread by the people from the guild. The old man sheds a tear, sincerely thanking the hero for his invaluable service in teaching the younger generation. The guest suddenly appears, falls to his knees, and tearfully asks for forgiveness. Henry reports that an important visitor has arrived to see the swordsman, which leaves the hero perplexed. All those present turn to look at the mysterious guest with apprehension and curiosity. The sobbing man folds his hands in prayer, looking at the magic swordsman as his last hope. The swordsman demands that the guest leave, but the chamberlain, in horror, begs him for mercy. The chamberlain tearfully begs the hero to go with him, otherwise his majesty will take everything into his own hands. Those present are shocked by the mention of the king, and Sol Mudok only irritably asks what business it is of his. The petitioner, in despair, grabs the hero by the leg, begging him not to refuse the royal invitation for his sake. Sol Mudok roughly pushes the sobbing man away with his foot, shouting, "Oh, come on!" The main character is furious that people have been coming to him and pestering him for several days in a row. Sol Mudok walks away, ordering everyone to come back and stop wasting their energy. The hero stops and thoughtfully clutches a magical artifact in the form of a crystal in his hand. Memory, Sol Mudok discusses the takeover of the North River region and the upcoming negotiations with the Mura Masters. The hero discusses that there are times when one needs to show strength and times when one does not. Sol Mudok states that the Ice Palace must suppress its opponents with more than just brute force. Screenshot 501, Sol Mudok states that if the plan doesn't work, they'll have to demonstrate their power again. The interlocutor agrees with his plan, and then someone addresses the hero as Your Highness. The hero claims that if they refuse to cooperate, the Ice Palace will attack them again. Sol Mudok recalls how he met the woman of his destiny on the way to negotiations. The screen shows a smiling Hua Young, her face illuminated by a soft light. The hero decides to just think about his beloved and not worry about trifles. The students joyfully greet their teacher at the edge of the forest. Sol Mudok remains calm, deciding to think through all available ways to solve problems. The action moves to a majestic castle at sunset. The king, sitting on the throne, states the fact the hero has once again refused. The chamberlain apologizes to his majesty while the king reflects on how intolerable he is. The king is furious. He wanted to thank the impudent man for saving his life, but he ignores him. The messenger, in tears, promises to return there tomorrow, to which the king skeptically asks how many times he has heard this promise. There is a knock at the door, and the arrival of Princess Asura is announced. The king dismisses the chamberlain and allows his daughter to enter, trying to hide his irritation. The princess passes by a sobbing servant, who is clearly shocked by her sudden appearance. Asura greets her father politely, displaying impeccable manners. The girl immediately notices something is wrong and asks why the chamberlain had such a displeased look on his face. The king looks confused and worried by his daughter's direct question. Upon hearing details of the mysterious satyr's behavior, the princess screams in shock. A worried girl runs up to the man, anxiously asking if he is hurt. The man calms her down, stroking her hand, and asks her not to worry so much. The girl is perplexed as to why the warrior declined the invitation, while the man complains that he simply ignores his requests. The interlocutors come to the conclusion that this person is truly an outstanding and remarkable personality. The topic of ice cream from the Roll Guild, which has become a bestseller and which the man has already tried, comes up. It turns out that it was the mage from this guild who created the dessert, who was the one who carried out the rescue. Having learned about this, the man admits that now he wants to get this person even more. A close-up shot of a girl trying the famous delicacy with a spoon is shown. She remembers the incredible feeling she had the first time she tried this ice cream. The girl realizes that the creator of the dessert is the very man her father is looking for, and wonders who he is. Young Sol Mudeok and Hua Young spend their childhood happily together eating ice cream in the garden. A close-up of the hero's eyes is shown, reflecting shock or sudden realization. After 2 weeks of training, the 4 students, under the supervision of Sol Mudok, meditate, emitting a powerful magical aura. Sol Mudok notes that the high concentration of mana in the area allowed the children to learn to emit energy unusually quickly. The hero claps his hands and orders the boys to finish their training, seeing their significant progress. Pleased with their control over mana, Sol Mudok announces to the students that they are moving on to the next, more difficult stage of training. The hero is suddenly addressed as Magic Swordsman, causing him to grimace in annoyance at yet another interruption. Sol Mudok sighs heavily, seeing before him the intrusive guests from whom he had hoped to rest for at least a day. The hero massages his neck in irritation, wondering why the uninvited visitors have once again appeared to him without an invitation. Suddenly, the necklace with the flower of love begins to emit a dazzling glow, shocking the hero to the depths of his soul. Sol Mudok turns around in complete shock, not believing his eyes and whispering, "Really?" The mysterious stranger in the hood slowly reveals her face. The girl introduces herself as Ashildr, princess of the Drake Kingdom, and greets the hero. Next to the princess stands a companion whose appearance strikingly resembles Sol Mudok's beloved. The action moves to the city, where a serious conversation begins over a cup of tea. Ashildr asks the hero if it is true that he saved her father's life. The princess is outraged by the guest's rudeness, but continues, her father invited him to the palace as a sign of gratitude. The girl is perplexed and asks directly why Sol Mudok refused the invitation. The princess's companion adds that he refused several times, and hero notes her resemblance to Hua Young. A sharp shout breaks Sol Mudok out of his deep thoughts. Sol Mudok agrees to the meeting and asks when he should arrive. The red-haired girl's reaction is one of extreme indignation. The princess's companion confirms the purpose of her visit and asks the hero to set the exact date and time of arrival at the palace. The girl suggests tomorrow morning around 11 o'clock, but Sol Mudok catches himself thinking that the time is unfortunate. Having agreed on a meeting, the hero says goodbye and gets ready to leave. Left alone, Sol Mudok thinks intensely about the fact that tomorrow in the palace he will be able to see her. He realizes the complexity of the situation. The one he's looking for is a princess, the daughter of the most powerful man in the country. Sitting in deep thought, the hero analyzes the status of the king's daughter and his own position. Mudok is visited by painful memories of the past, which feature a stately warrior with a sword in the rain. Sol Mudok is determined to plan everything carefully, so that the tragedy of the past does not repeat itself. The hero understands that he cannot do this without Edmund's help. Sol Mudok shocks his interlocutor by bluntly declaring his desire to marry Princess Ashildr. The old man jumps up in horror and screams, asking the hero if he has gone crazy. Sol Mudok releases a frightening aura and asks in an icy tone, "What?" causing the other person to hiccup in fear. Having changed his anger to mercy, the hero asks to explain why his plan seems impossible. The old man explains that Princess Ashildr is the only daughter of the late Queen Swan. She is the only legitimate heir to the throne, making her status unattainable. The interlocutor emphasizes, an unknown foreigner without a knightly title simply cannot claim the princess's hand. The old man takes a breath and concludes that such a proposal is absolutely impossible. He adds that the princess's groom can only be a prince or grand duke from another country. Sol Mudok falls silent thoughtfully and then says a short, "Den." Sol Mudok muses that high status or fame would greatly help him in marrying Ashildr. The interlocutor confirms his thoughts and states that this position in society must be earned. The hero enthusiastically agrees to try, but the old man abruptly interrupts his ardor. The old man asks if Mudok knows what exactly must be protected in the palace. Receiving a puzzled look in response, the interlocutor goes to the bookshelves for the necessary materials. A huge stack of books entitled Basics of Etiquette appears in front of the stunned hero. Edmund, radiating a frightening energy, declares that he will train Mudok thoroughly so as not to let the guild down. Sol Mudok watches in confusion at the strange enthusiasm of his sudden teacher. Realizing that he has no choice, the hero humbly agrees and picks up the first book. After a while, Mudok looks completely exhausted, trying to grasp the subtleties of palace manners. Sol Mudok tidies himself up, adjusting his sleeves and gathering his long hair into a ponytail. Having completed his preparations, the hero confidently leaves the room, declaring, "Well then?" The carriage arrives at a luxurious white stone castle, and a servant announces the arrival of a magical swordsman. Sol Mudok enters the throne room and formally greets the king with a deep bow. The ruler, with a broad smile and open arms, joyfully welcomes the guest into his palace. The hero notices something is wrong and looks at the people present in the hall with puzzlement. Sol Mudok is puzzled as to why so many outside nobles have come to the private meeting. Princess Ashildr, clearly nervous, justifies herself by saying that she did not schedule the meeting for this day on purpose. Looking at the princess's agitated expression, the swordsman realizes that she made an unintentional mistake. One of the aristocrats present jumps up from his seat, angrily asking why this bad guy is here. Sol Mudok maintains an icy calm, carefully observing the reactions of the aristocrats around him. A tense silence hangs in the hall as the nobility exchanges glances in amazement. recognizing the guest as that very man. A barely noticeable, defiant grin appears on the hero's face in response to the general confusion. One of the young nobles, unable to withstand the provocation, jumps up from his seat in obvious anger. An angry guy named Justin shouts that this asshole is going too far, but they try to stop him. The stern father pulls Justin up short, asking if he is about to make a fool of himself in front of His Majesty. The young aristocrat is forced to remain silent, but his face shows how deeply hurt he is. Having conceded defeat in the argument, Justin sits down while the king notes that the hero clearly has his own ideas. Those present whisper among themselves, agreeing with the king that the guest was indeed treated unfairly. The king interrupts the discussion with the question of what made the hero so suddenly accept his invitation. Solmudok asks his interlocutor with a grin if he realizes how upset he was, and adds that there is a reason for it. The king, with a serious expression, asks the hero directly what exactly this reason is. Sol Mudok explains that the Roll Trade Guild is currently very busy due to a shortage of workers. He explains that he is the busiest of all because he has to produce ice, and so he wanted to prepare the ice in advance and then go to the addressee, Your Majesty. Sol Mudok explains that orders are growing every day, so even if he makes more ice, he always runs out and says that day after day it was postponed, but today is the day. The man says the ice cream is selling like hotcakes, so they must have been very busy. The man says he's grateful for your understanding. The man explains that compared to Dan Chunhak, he's a real fairy. The man says he has no name and is simply called the Magic Swordsman, Your Highness, and Sol Mudok explains that he doesn't have a name. The man says his name is simply Magic Swordsman. The man says that he can't address them as you every time and says ho-oh. The man says it's a problem and wonders why he can't come up with a solution. The girl suggests that her father come up with a name himself. The woman says he has no name. The girl says she's offering to give him a title. The man is surprised. The man asks about the title and explains that it is a worthy reward because he saved his life. The man says he doesn't drink tea, but he'll make an exception today. The man explains that it was he who saved the life of His Majesty the King and asks how one cannot praise him for this achievement. The woman says that she believes that Her Highness's thoughts are truly excellent and begins to say, "What?" A man says he can't ignore the person who saved his life. The man explains that he is taking on the title. The man says that on the evening he saw himself being rescued, one word came to his mind. Sol Mudok screams and attacks enemies surrounded by swords. The man explains that this sword was forged in an era of great heroes and has the power to change the course of battle. A man ponders a title. The boy explains that he doesn't like kneeling, but if that way he can marry the princess, he will, and says that his studies with Edmund yesterday helped. King Drake Tomalov III says that he addresses the brave man who saved him and his vassals in a critical situation, not sparing his own life, and hereby grants him the title of Baron along with the name Blizzard. Sol Mudok explains that blizzard in the language of this world means snowstorm. The man explains that this will allow the name to be passed on to one descendant in the Drake Kingdom. The man tells Baron Vuga to stand up. A man thanks Sol Mudok, says that if it weren't for him, he wouldn't be here now. He says that if something like this happened again, he would do exactly the same thing. The man tells Your Majesty that Baron Vuga saved his life and considers it fair to grant him an estate befitting his title. The red-haired man explains that it is unprecedented for a baron not to receive a fief and that questions will certainly arise. Mudok says that no one will dare to disobey the order. The man says that if such a person is found, he will remind him of the meaning of His Majesty's order. The man with red hair and a beard says he thinks the same. The man in brown clothes asks if Your Majesty is speaking to them. The man with long dark hair thinks he has an ulterior motive for this action. A man screams. A man is surprised. The man explains that it is, and the other man says, "Yes, Your Majesty." The man says that if they think so, then great, and explains that there is territory that they could give to Baron Vuga. The man says there are northern icy lands that he mentioned at the meeting a few days ago. The man is surprised. The man explains that it just so happened that they needed a lord they could send there, and it just all worked out on its own. Sol Mudok says that the name Baron Vuga and the northern lands go very well together, and explains that he has a good feeling about it. The man says he can't afford to waste a second because time is money. The man had been suspicious ever since another man offered to give him a title and wanted to make him pay for hurting his son and his pride. The girl wonders if this is the northern land, so could it be that icy continent? The girl is surprised, asking if they are sending him there. The man remains silent. Sol Mudok is surprised by the name Fiad. He explains that he thinks the man is doing this because he wants to kick him out of here because of his son. Sol Mudok says he shouldn't refuse, since they're giving him the land. He explains that he is using this as an opportunity to strengthen his reputation and close the status gap between them. The guy is surprised that this is Severnaya Zemlya. The man asks if Sol is really. Mudok travels to the northern lands, where snowstorms rage, avalanches occur, the cold is bitter, and even the mana is unstable. Sol Mudok explains that this is true. He says he doesn't catch a cold, and since the mana there is unstable, that's even more interesting. The man explains that the magical swordsman, no, the Baron is a Yeti or something like that. Sol Mudok is surprised when asked about the Yeti. The man explains that they resemble humans in appearance, but legends say they are approximately 3 meters tall, and because of this height, they possess considerable strength. He explains that they are said to be completely immune to cold and violence. The man explains that rumor has it that one northerner is equal in strength to 100 people from the rest of the country. The man explains that this is why they hate those who rule them and do not acknowledge the existence of leaders. The guy is surprised that this is interesting, and Sol Mudok says that sounds interesting too. He says that if he gains recognition from the people of the north, his reputation will rise. The man reflects that this is easier said than done. Sol Mudok is surprised and says, The girl says they're here for something. A blindfolded man and 2 children are crying. Sol Mudok says that for those who have only recently become acquainted with martial arts, the northern lands are dangerous, and shouts that it is impossible. The girl says they still have a lot to learn, and if he leaves, who will they learn magic from? The boy explains that Sabina is right. The guy with the bandage on his head says that he is begging them, and Sol Mudok asks. He is surprised that the girl explains that the girl is surprised by the name Ashildr and says hello, Baron Vuga. The woman says they have no face and asks if something is wrong, and the man explains that they should talk after the children leave them. Sol Mudok says he understands, and now they can go. He is silent. The man is silent. The girl asks if he will listen to their request then, and Sol Mudok is surprised. The guy says that if they answer, they will leave immediately, but he remains silent. The woman says she'll listen. The boy with the headband and the boy with the short hair are smiling. The girl with the pink hair is smiling. 3 people are screaming and jumping. Sol Mudok says that's enough and orders them to get out of here. The guy thanks Sol Mudok and calls him teacher. The hooded man says he has such energetic students, and he explains that they are not so much energetic as rebellious. Sol Mudok laughs, and the girl says that she feels better now. The girl says she's sorry and explains that she asked her father for a title for no reason, which is why he's going to the northern lands. The girl is surprised that she thought they were very similar, but she didn't even suspect that they were so similar. Sol Mudok explains that she also apologized to him because of Dan Chunhak and says that she feels sorry for him. He is silent. Sol Mudok says that if he hadn't received this title, he wouldn't have gone north, and the girl is surprised. The woman says she's truly sorry. The man calls her cute. Sol Mudok says he has to go eventually and asks what's changed since their apology. The girl replies, He says how he can calm things down a little. The girl is surprised and asks what a good luck charm is. Sol Mudok says it's a kiss filled with genuine concern for another person, and the girl is surprised. The girl starts talking. Sol Mudok says that judging by the reaction, it would have been better to say nothing. He says that he needs to go get ready to leave and asks the princess to forget what he just said. The girl replies that the guy in the hood yells that he just said what he wants and leaves and asks who this person is. The man is surprised. The girl is surprised and screams. Sol Mudok says we need a minute. The girl asks him to wait, and he asks what happened. The girl is surprised. Sol Mudok is surprised that he did something wrong and wonders what it was, but at the same time explains that this guy's behavior seems familiar to him. The girl understands and says she will do it. Sol Mudok says that everything is fine, and he doesn't want to force something on someone who doesn't want it, and is surprised that he said this half-jokingly, but didn't expect such a reaction. He says, let's just ignore it. Woman kissing Sol Mudok, and he looks at her with surprise. The guy shouts that after all. The man in the cloak leaves, and Sol Mudok silently looks forward. A strong wind blows snow off frost-covered tree branches around an illuminated building against a gloomy sky. A man says that this time a new lord is coming, and rumor has it that he saved the king's life, and another man explains that for this he was given the title and estate. A man says he heard he single-handedly defeated 100 enemies in an instant, and another man counters that it's a lie. The man explains that he's a sixth circle wizard and possesses fencing skills equal to a master swordsman, and he confirms this with his word of honor. The man asks why such a wonderful guy has to come here. The man explains that it is obvious he has fallen out of favor with Duke Icarus. The man with the scar on his face says he didn't expect this turn of events. The man with long hair clenches his fist. The man explains that even if that is the case, it is just a rumor. The man explains that if you scare them enough, he will simply run away from them. Depicts a snow-covered forest with a strong wind that raises snow flurries between the trees. The guy screams that it's the devil, and the woman screams that it's a stupid wyvern and asks where it is. The guy is screaming. The dragon screams as it attacks the man, who screams back. The man shouts that the moon. The man asks Luna if she's okay, and Luna's response is halting. The man explains that they were just trying to get a couple of eggs. The guy screams that he is in despair. A woman yells at Jake that he is behind her as a dragon rapidly approaches. A man with a knife in his hand jumps into the open mouth of a huge predator. Sol Mudok shouts that he will not allow this creature to come near humans and explains that his mission is to protect this world. The creature roars and prepares to attack, opening its mouth and emitting bright energy. Sol Mudok lunges downwards, sending a powerful energy blast towards the creature. The woman screams that it is a werewolf, and the man explains that he cannot approach it. The girl says that the dragon cannot be killed because he is a guardian. Sol Mudok says everything is fine now. The girl thanks for the help. Sol Mudok says he was just doing what he had to do as a lord, and then the lord asks. He says he'll see you later. The guy apologizes. The guy says the fast one has already disappeared. The guy is screaming. Sol Mudok says that's how it is. The man says it's empty and asks if everyone knows it's his inauguration today. The man apologizes to the Lord and explains that he will send messengers to every village again. Sol Mudok says that even if he sends it, he doesn't think anyone will show up. He explains that he seems to understand why the lords here kept changing. Sol Mudok screams and then says he has his own path. The man says he can't believe it happened. The man with the eye patch says he doesn't know who it is and suggests that the new lord might have done it. The man explains that he is upset at the way they were treated but must acknowledge the skill of the opponent. And the other man explains that it was so fast, and no matter what method they used, he could not move when the opponent touched his body. The man with the bandage on his head says that the other man's hands were so sharp that the pain was indescribable, and the man with the beard says, The man says he has appeared. A man is shouting that he is now in the city square. The man says he will go. The man says, is Caroluna's greatest warrior finally stepping forward? The man tells Max that he believes in him and explains that he must finish off this bastard. Sol Mudok is silent. Sol Mudok explains that there are many more people here. He is surprised. The woman is surprised that it was a man, and the man asks if it was a woman. The woman turns around and says, it's Dad. The woman says she came here because she saw the people gathered. The man says everyone is here because a new lord has arrived. Sol Mudok says he was simply doing what he had to do as a lord. The man is surprised that's what he meant and asks what Sol is talking about. Mudok. The girl says she already told him about the man who saved her when she was in danger while stealing ice wyvern eggs. The man is surprised. A man reflects that the man who saved his daughter and was a lord turned out to be more complex than he thought. The man says he killed an unusual wyvern and an ice wyvern with one blow, explaining that this is no easy feat even for a warrior like Carolune. The man explains that as a warrior of Caroluna, he must recognize such a person. Sol Mudok explains that he is the recently appointed Baron of Carolune, Vuga. The man explains that panic has broken out in the city due to rumors of an attack and asks people to prepare for possible danger. The man asks if they say Sol Mudok goes from town to town, mercilessly beating people. Sol Mudok explains that he simply reprimanded those who tried to rebel. He asks if you want to be in their place, and the man explains that, of course, no, but Sol Mudok says this is an offer. He explains that this place, Caroluna, is very cold, so since ancient times people have been drinking strong alcohol to cope with the cold. The image shows the process of pouring a dark liquid into a glass of ice. The liquid flows from the top of the vessel, creating glittering reflections and iridescent reflections, and fills the glass, creating an effect of movement and transparency. Sol Mudok says they came to an agreement. The man explains that it's a very strong drink that will get the blood pumping throughout the body and asks her to think carefully and make a decision. The man says he doesn't care. Sol Mudok says that if he wins, they will recognize him as their master and follow him unconditionally. The guy says he's totally crazy and is actually going to drink the fenna, and the other guy says it's a drinking bet with Max, and then of course Max. The guy says that if they want to give up, it's not too late. Sol Mudok says he can't afford to lose. The man says, don't regret it. A man yells, Max. A man with a bandage on his head says, blah ah. A woman and a man next to him look worried. The guy asks if Max is okay, and the man explains that he thinks he just passed out. A woman tells her father to stop drinking, and he explains that he is not drunk yet. No, this can't be, he can't lose like this, and he asks for another drink. Sol Mudok says to be careful not to overdo it when pouring a drink into a mug. He wonders why there are two of them, and says that they will continue. The man wonders why he's okay, and explains that he thinks he should just give up at this point. The man says that's enough, but then decides to continue. The other man explains that, as the first one says, a man drinks from a large mug, sweat pouring down his face. The boy explains that he can't afford to die because he has a wife and child. The man says he can't die because he has a family. Sol Mudok drinks from a large mug. A woman and a man are screaming. The guy puts his mug on the table and says that maybe it's because he hasn't had a drink in a long time, but everything is going like clockwork. Sol Mudok is surprised. He screams. A man falls to the floor next to an overturned table and a spilled drink. The man with the beard says that Max passed out, and the other man explains it was difficulty. Sol Mudok says, well then. He tells everyone present to gather at his castle in exactly 5 days. Sol Mudok shouts that he will point out the culprit. Against the backdrop of a snow-covered forest and mountain, a castle with a raised bridge decorated with banners is depicted. Sol Mudok wonders what this is. The man with the eye patch says he thought they wouldn't come, but they're surprisingly good at keeping their promises. The man says it's a given, and he explains that he knew it and everything is fine. Sol Mudok says that his interlocutors probably know who he is, so he gets straight to the point and gives them 10 days to prepare for the move. The woman says she's surprised by the silence. The man explains that he's surprised they don't say anything in response. The guy asks if they want everyone to live in his castle. Sol Mudok says there is no way all these residents will be able to live in this castle. The guy says they were told to pack their bags. Sol Mudok says no one said they would live here and asks, what then? He says they are moving north now. A man screams. A blindfolded man stands holding an object in his hand. Sol Mudok says he has been wandering around the area for the past 5 days and has found a good place in the north where at least 10,000 people could live. He says that from now on, instead of living separately, everyone will live together, and the man wonders if this makes sense. The man explains that this is where ice cannibals live in groups. The man retells the question about the ice cannibals. Sol Mudok says he's talking about those bald guys with bear-like bodies who walk on 2 legs. The man asks if the interlocutor has met them. Sol Mudok smiles. He delivers a powerful blow with his eyes glowing brightly, surrounded by a whirlwind of energy and bloody splashes, striking a huge, monstrous beast with red eyes and sharp teeth. The man with the eye patch says he's destroyed them all, and the man on the right is surprised. The man with the eye patch explains that he doesn't understand why they're so surprised. The guy says it's time to go our separate ways now. Sol Mudok says there's only one thing left now. He says, hello, my lord, and then looks surprised, asking if it is he. Luna explains that they weren't able to introduce themselves earlier because everything was so quick, and gives her name. Jake tells her name. The man says he thinks he knows why they came to see him. Sol Mudok says he was just about to call. He explains that it's not that important, so there's no need to get nervous, and the man asks what he means. Sol Mudok says, just follow me. The man says to come here. A woman screams, a man screams. The voice explains that these are ice wyvern cubs. Sol Mudok laughs, and the red-haired woman explains that they stole the eggs for this very purpose and wonders how they could do such a thing when they had worked so hard to obtain them. The man stands next to the woman. He asks who saved them that day, and the man and the girl with the hat respond with surprise. The man says he can't. Sol Mudok explains that they are sleeping, so they need to be quiet. The guy says they're ice wyverns, and the woman explains that she initially thought about raising them, but they're too noisy and eat too much, which is why she's been going crazy lately. The ice wrens are screaming for food, tag, and ball games, and Sol Mudok covers his ears with his hands. He says that after hatching from an egg, the wyvern first recognizes its mother, so there is no point in them taking these guys. He is surprised and repeats that this is not true. Sol Mudok asks if he should continue raising these annoying and troublesome creatures, and the man explains that the ice wyverns are annoying and asks what kind of nonsense he's talking about. The guy says that ice wyverns are larger and more powerful than normal wyverns. Sol Mudok explains that he has the ability to tame them, and the man ponders. The man says that if he were him, he'd tame a wyvern, which could easily fly to Tenston. He asks where Tenston is. The man explains that Tenston is the second capital of the Kaya kingdom, located 1,000 kilometers to the west. The guy wonders if it's possible to fly that far on these things, and Solmudok explains that the round trip will only take an hour or two. He is surprised and says to wait then. Solmudok asks how he can tame them, and the girl asks if he has changed his mind. He says he has a great idea. A few days later, the people of Karelun began the Great Migration at the direction of Solmudok. The girl runs and says that they must hurry. Mudok walks ahead silently. 3 men walk behind, following them. He says, "Teacher." The girl says that people have a hard time and explains that it must be hard for everyone after 3 days and nights on the road. Solmudok says it seems there are still people who don't trust him and are hesitant. The man says that they will soon reach their goal, and then their hearts will change. He says to listen to everyone carefully. Solmudok explains that he won't let anyone stand in his way. The man says they don't know where they're going, and the other man explains that he's not even sure there really isn't an ice ogre there. The sword plunges into the water with a loud splash. Solmudok says he has defeated everyone. He says that they are all brave warriors of Karelun and shouts. The man is silent. The girl says, "Teacher." The girl says that's enough, now they will understand, and confirms this with the word yes. Solmudok says they'll understand when they get there. The girl is surprised. The girl says that it is always cold in the cave, and Solmudok explains that rare crystals can be found here. The girl is surprised, and he says that here. The boy explains that this is the place the teacher talked about. Solmudok explains that it took a while to find this place, and says that he thinks they will like it there. The woman says there's a cave inside the cave. The girl explains the water is warm. The man says he didn't know there was such a place in Karelun, and notes that the others are finally feeling better. The woman tells everyone to listen. The girl is surprised. Solmudok says that this place was once a refuge for ice cannibals, but now they live here. He says that since they are going to live here, it would be easier to give the place a new name, and the crowd agrees. Solmudok explains that he cannot afford to make a mistake because it will cost the lives of many people. He is surprised that he cannot believe his eyes. Solmudok explains that from now on this place is called the White Castle. The blindfolded man says it's always cold in this place, and the girl with the fur hat says it won't stop them from moving forward. Solmudok explains that all that remains now is to take the wyvern cubs and place them in that empty space. He screams. Solmudok is surprised by this sound, and then says that it is a lightning ball. The beast screams, surrounded by bright flashes of lightning. A wounded creature lies on the rocks, with electricity sparking around it. Solmudok says, "Why are there wyverns here?" The guy wonders where the wizard came from and remains silent. Solmudok suddenly moves his hand, causing a flash of light, and then quickly attacks the man. His fingers are surrounded by energy and pointed forward. Solmudok concentrates his energy. Lightning and sparks flash around him. He screams. He screams, choking and foaming at the mouth as he is strangled. Solmudok screams and delivers a powerful blow surrounded by glowing energy, causing the opponent to fall backwards. The guy is screaming. Solmudok says he won't ask twice. The man with glasses looks up silently, clenching his teeth. He screams why his wyverns attacked him. Solmudok is surprised that he is paralyzed and cannot move. He says that the mouth is not paralyzed, so it is possible to speak, and orders him to answer quickly. The man agrees to speak. Count Jerome von Karowin says he is Count Jerome von Karowin. Solmudok is surprised that he can't believe his eyes. The man asks if this means he is the same Baronet Blizzard who saved His Majesty's life and received the title and lands. He is surprised that the man knows about him. Solmudok says he needs a minute, and the man is surprised. The man asks if this is the same former lord appointed here and then exiled. The boy is surprised and tries to say something. The man says he thinks it is. Solmudok says it's none of his business, but the man shouts that there were circumstances. He says that he looked down on him, and the man explains that now that they know who he is, aren't they on the same side? The man says he is right. Solmudok says the other person is the equal of his dog and calls him a goat, then confirms that the other person is wrong. The man is surprised. The man shouts that the other one didn't fulfill his duties and he should have just given up the title, and the man with glasses shouts and is surprised, asking what equals are and repeating the word equals. Solmudok says that this time he will do you a special favor and warns you not to even think about fighting him again. There is a strong impact on the surface, accompanied by breaking sounds. The man says the acupuncture needle has been removed and he can now move. Solmudok says, He says that if his interlocutor talks nonsense, he will definitely kill him, but his interlocutor explains that this will not happen. Sol Mudak says that now you need to heal the wyverns and leave, and also explains that you need to heal them all. He wonders what he needs to cure. Sol Mudak says he is confident in his ability to understand people and explains that since he used magic, it means he can be useful. The man explains what it is. The man falls and says something went wrong. The man shouts that. The guy explains that he can't take responsibility for this and says he doesn't want anyone to get hurt because of him. Solmadak explains that he can't afford to be weak because it will lead to the deaths of many people. The man listens. The man asks if he told her to send a letter requesting a tax exemption. He explains that the place is too busy trying to make a living right now. The man explains that other nobles will be against it. The man explains that from their point of view, this is unfair, and says that if the bill is passed, they can threaten His Majesty with non-payment of taxes, claiming that their conditions are no better than ours. Sol Mudak explains that no matter how much His Majesty the King favors them, he will refuse and is surprised. The man with the mustache explains that the nobles are indeed the problem, and at the center of it all is the guy who sent him here. He says that they'll put it off then, and the other man sighs. The man says, "Then what about this?" The man shouts. Sol Mudak says yes. He says that it is definitely possible, and the man is surprised that it is possible. Sol Mudak says it's good. The man with the sword on his back explains that many useful things can be found in this place, and the man with the axe explains that they need to be careful, as dangerous creatures are often encountered here. He explains that they should move together and not lose sight of each other. The man in front agrees and says, the man asks why the leader gathered them so suddenly, and the guy replies that he doesn't know. Sol Mudak shouts that he will not tolerate betrayal and is ready to fight to the end. A man with a scar on his face explains that strange people have recently appeared in the area and warns that they are dangerous. A man with an eye patch explains that these people have unusual abilities and can cause harm. He explains that they need to be careful and stick together to deal with them. The girl says that she came fully armed, but does not understand why everyone was gathered here, and explains that she will explain now. Solmodok says he can't afford to make a mistake and explains that if he fails, all will be lost. He explains that they are going on an ice wyvern hunt and explains that the target will be ice wyvern eggs. The man explains that it's not easy to just target the eggs, and the boy is surprised that they are ice wyvern eggs. Sol Mudak says that for security reasons they will split into teams of 30 and explains that they should focus on stealing eggs. At least one will be enough. The man with glasses explains that the commanders should come and take the lists. The guy is surprised that there are 100 gold coins there. Sol Mudak says that this is a huge amount of money that he will never be able to get for anything in his life, and the man explains that they will really only give a reward for eggs. He says that they are warriors of Karelun, and the man asks if they will definitely be given 100 gold pieces. Sol Mudak says he never makes empty promises, and asks if they can handle it. He explains that he can't afford to die here because he has a duty to his family and he's not going to give up. The man explains that if he dies, no one will be able to fulfill their mission, and so he must keep fighting. Sol Mudak shouts to trust them, and the crowd responds with shouts. A man with a sword in his hands, says Jerome. He replies that he is the head. Sol Mudak says that over the next 10 days he will monitor each team and look for useful guys, and later use the most useful ones for other purposes. A man asks his interlocutor if he is thinking about creating a knightly order. Sol Mudak says something is wrong, and asks if he said something wrong. He explains that despite the fact that he gave Imu a job immediately after his arrival, he handled it quite well and understood what he said, and explains that, as expected, Imu is quite useful. The man explains that the Lion Knights of the Icarus Duchy are especially powerful, so strong that they wouldn't lose even in a battle with the Royal Knights. He explains not to worry. The man asks if the equipment was thoroughly inspected. Sol Mudak explains that if he can't win, he will die, because he can't lose her a second time. Sol Mudak says that then. He says they are leaving. The dragon spews fire and lets out a loud roar. Sol Mudak says he can't die because his body belongs to someone else. Sharp ice projectiles move quickly on the snowy road. A man with long hair and red eyes screams as two other men jump down. The girl orders Jake to cut off the tail. Jake cuts off the tail. A man delivers a powerful punch with a glowing fist into the face of a huge monster, causing it to scream. The man orders the second squad to tear off the net. The guy shouts that there are 3. The web stretches and holds the object tightly. The monster screams and falls down. Sol Mudak says it looks good. The man explains that they've been hunting for several days and explains that now their arms and legs will work perfectly in sync. He explains that it would never have occurred to him to steal an ice wyvern egg and tame it from infancy. If all goes well, Solmudok explains that they can make a lot of money by transporting and selling hunting loot, such as skin and bones, to distant cities using ice wyverns. He says that if they bring back a lot of ice wyvern eggs from this hunt, they will receive an excellent reward. A man with long blonde hair screams and runs forward. Solmudok prepares for battle with concentration. A man with short blonde hair and a woman with dark hair smile and greet. The man shouts. He says that uniting the unruly warriors of Karelin into one whole, no matter how many times he sees it, it is still amazing. The boy screams as he makes a swift leap with 2 daggers in his hands, surrounded by a whirlwind of energy. Solmudok says that, as expected, he finished off his storm. He tells who this guy is, who just killed an ice wyvern with his sword. Sole Mudok, he says. He explains that this is Short's real storm, and judging by his nickname, he must be quite famous. He explains that Short is a hero of the common people, who raids the houses of evil nobles and distributes wealth to the common people. Sol Mudok says this guy is here because he was trapped and imprisoned, but seems to have escaped. He is surprised that he cannot believe his eyes. The guy says that he always works, and Sol Mudok explains that judging by how he gets along with the locals, he seems like a decent guy. He tells Jerome that if there is anyone else besides this guy who escaped from prison, then it needs to be reported in detail. Jerome replies that there is. The man says they might find something else useful. The voice says that everyone did a great job. Sol Mudok says that thanks to the hard work of everyone involved in the wyvern hunt, they have collected a sufficient number of ice wyvern eggs. The man explains that he will definitely present the award as promised, and the other man asks the Lord for forgiveness. The man explains that he cannot afford to die because he has a daughter. Sol Mudok says he wants to know what Max is. The man says they brought ice wyvern eggs, but doesn't understand why. Sol Mudok says that everyone was curious why he suddenly asked to collect wyvern eggs, and explains that he will now explain everything. He explains that ice wyverns, when hatched, mistake the first creatures they see for their mothers, and he wants to tame them using this method. He reveals that he plans to use the tamed ice wyverns as mounts, with the laden wyverns delivering goods. Sol Mudok talks about what products they will specialize in, and explains that they can specialize in many things, but the first one is leather. He screams. The hooded guy says the ice ogres want to drive them all to their graves, and the man with the eye patch explains that he still wants to live. Sol Mudok explains that if he doesn't tell, no one will know. The sound of footsteps can be heard on stage. Sol Mudok says who got rid of the ice ogres that had been swarming around the White Castle for a long time. He says that it is he, and explains that this is why the interlocutors really think that he will allow them to become food for them. The man with long hair explains that the situation is definitely different from before, and if they are with them, the man with short hair explains that. The guy says it gives them courage and laughs, asking, "So what?" The hooded man says he is. The scarred man smiles. The long-eared man stands silently. Sol Mudok says he will give out an award and talk about his plans for the future. And then someone shouts teacher and repeats it several times while running quickly. He says they are still talking and asks what happened, and the man apologizes and explains that a big problem has happened. The guy asks if it's a big problem, and he explains that it's Sister Sabina. Sol Mudok says Sister Sabina is dying. The guy tells his sister to cover herself with this. The girl thanks Laffy. The girl says, "Sister." The boy says, "Hold on, sister. The teacher will definitely arrive soon." The guy says what happened, and the girl screams, "Teacher." Sol Mudok says he'll take a look. He is surprised that this is. The girl says, "It's so cold, teacher," and Sol Mudok explains that the situation is more serious than he thought. He asks them to tell him how Sabina became ill. The man begins to explain what really happened. A man says he's helping Mr. Osborne find a place to build a pen for the ice wyvern hatchlings. Sol Mudok says they discovered a huge flower field full of ice flowers that they've only seen in books. The man explains that his sister probably wanted to show them off. The boy says they will take some flowers because the teacher will probably like them. Sol Mudok explains that they returned with flowers. The girl is shivering from the cold. He screams. Creek calls his sister Sabina and calls her sister again. Sol Mudok asks what they should do now if the sister doesn't wake up. The man explains that this won't happen and urges them to calm down. The man picks up the ice flower, wondering what kind of plant it is. He is surprised, asking if this is it. The guy is surprised that it could be a snowflower and explains that he was talking specifically about these ice flowers. Sol Mudok says this is the only elixir from the North Sea and the Central Plains, as they can exist in this world. The man asks the teacher to save Sabina. He says that we need to hurry and go to the training ground. A girl with pink hair is running while holding a teddy bear tightly. A man with blue hair and long blonde hair is running next to her, and another man in a white cloak is running ahead. A man's shadow is cast on the wall, and there is a bed with a pillow next to it. Sol Mudok tells Leo to put Sabina here. He tells her to be careful not to get hurt and says, "That's great." The guy replies that he understands. The man says Leo did a great job. The girl screams. Sol Mudok explains that from now on he will begin treatment and categorically forbids the children to enter the room without his permission, and the children confirm that they understand. The boy says that the teacher must save their sister, and he explains to go quickly. Sol Mudok says that the snowflower in this world is called an ice flower. It is said that in this world it is known as a mysterious flower that only emits useless cold air, but in the North Sea where it lived, the fruit of this flower is an unrivaled elixir. Sol Mudok explains that the extreme cold from this flower makes it difficult to harvest its fruits, but for someone like him who is proficient in ice chi, it's a different story. Sabina fainted because her ice chi wasn't strong enough to withstand the cold. Sol's chest. Mudok, a glowing energy begins to appear around them. The man says Sabina, then repeats the name with an exclamation. The girl is surprised and asks if this is a teacher. Sol Mudok says it's him, Sabina, and explains that when you wake up, you need to sit up straight and try to channel your chi. Sabina says she understands and calls him teacher. He makes a sound, concentrating the energy in his hands, then explains that the power begins to manifest and intensify. A man emits a bright light from his chest. The guy is screaming. The girl screams, "Oh my God." The girl stutters her agreement. The man explains that she simply fell asleep and needed to close her eyes. Sol Mudok explains that her internal energy has increased significantly compared to before. He says the effect is better than he thought, and explains that if this continues, it would be a good idea to increase the intensity of the training. Sol Mudok says he can achieve his goal much sooner. The girl is surprised when she calls the teacher and wakes up after a good rest. Following the collection of ice wyvern eggs, a major reorganization began in the White Castle. Mudok checked the list compiled by Jerome and organized his own elite knights called the Knights of the Storm Squad. He says that he will not talk much and will make them his knights. Sol Mudok explains that they are the Knights of Buran. Short, who showed the best results in all aspects, was appointed captain of the squad. First with Sol Mudok was built with schools, hospitals, restaurants, bars, clothing stores, and other establishments. He explains that since a reorganization is needed, the appropriate employees need to be brought in, and the man confirms this. Sol Mudok explains that Osborne Mariron would be better served in security than as his assistant, and tells Jerome that he will be his assistant. He asks if he wants to, and the man explains that his mission is to teach magic to others. He asks what he means, fool. The man says he will work hard, and he explains that of course he must. A man says he doesn't want to die and thinks he deserves 1,000,000 gold pieces. Sol Mudok says yes. He says he will be captain of the guard. Another group is the Wyvern Knights, but the man shouts that he is happy and asks for it to be delivered to him, my lord. The man says that he is still worried. Sol Mudok says it's a secret that he's the leader, and the girl will be acting in his place. The girl confirms this. Sol Mudok explains that everything worked out perfectly. A few days later, the man says Ho-ak and Ho-oh. The man says that he is indeed late and explains that he should have asked him to reduce the workload, or a man asks for forgiveness, but in his mind he wonders how much more chaos there will be today. The man says they've just started and offers to sit down, and Sol Mudok apologizes for being late. The man explains that he cannot believe what is happening, and that it is impossible. The girl says hello, and the man is surprised that she recently fell ill and asks why on earth she is here. Sol Mudok says that since he came, then sit down quickly, and the man replies that yes. The man tells Osborne to continue, and Osborne agrees. The man explains that only a short time has passed since the formation of the guard detachment, but there are already more than 20 people in prison, and explains that the problem is that more than half of them are fugitives who arrived from outside. The man says that these are clearly criminals, and they all need to be arrested and locked up so that they don't cause any more trouble, and the other man confirms this. Sol Mudok asks whether they should be arrested first and foremost as the main culprits of the uprising, which led to the ouster of such a capable former leader as Jerome without cause. The girl explains that this is precisely him. The man explains that it was self-defense to protect Karelun's autonomy from the central nobility, and he says that their actions are a noble struggle, and the actions of the Storm Squad leader are petty theft. The man explains that it is not, and asks for forgiveness from a Storm Knight. Sol Mudok says that he hopes Max will never forget the cause of the suffering of ordinary people, and also explains that they are currently in a meeting, so he suggests they talk about it later. He wonders how anyone can be so short-sighted and asks if there are any other opinions. The girl says she can't believe he did that. Sol Mudok explains that if there are no problems, he will be able to complete the task. The woman explains that if Sir Max says that, it means there is a negative public opinion about the fugitives in the village, and he says that this is true. Sol Mudok says the cannibal hunt starts today, and the girl asks what that means. The girl suggests putting people in prison at the forefront of the hunt. The man is surprised. The man says he didn't expect this turn of events and explains that the situation is getting out of control. The man says he can't believe it happened. Sol Mudok explains that he was always alone and didn't need anyone. He says that it's not a bad idea and asks Sabina to keep talking. A foot in fur boots steps on the snow, causing a swirl of snowflakes. A monster with red eyes and sharp teeth screams while attacking. A man with a bandage on his face says they have lost someone, turning to Captain Schwart. Captain Gregor Schwart talks about the escapee First Class Gregory, and Lennon explains that he is also an escapee First Class. Sol Mudok says it looks like it and explains that once they get far enough away, they need to hide their presence and attack as usual. A man says yes. A man runs through the snow with a club in his hand. A man with a sword jumps and strikes, while another man with an axe falls down. The guy shouts at Lake and orders him to take this one. The monster screams as it fights, and its eye glows red. The man delivers a powerful blow with his sword, and Sol Mudok dodges the attack. A man screams. The man shouts that it is too late to leave her. The guy yells down, "Lenin," and strikes. The image shows sharp claws that abruptly descend with a bright light effect. A man with a bandage on his face screams as he attacks his opponent, who parries the blows and counterattacks with multiple, rapid strikes. Sol Mudok delivers a powerful blow, knocking the opponent back with force, accompanied by flashes of red energy and flying drops of blood. The girl says she proposes to put those in prison at the forefront of the hunt. Sol Mudok says he's not going to give up. The man says that using them as human shields in the vanguard is a last resort. He explains that if the teacher goes with them, it will be more humane than imprisoning them, and that he is not one to waste human resources easily. The guy says he's not going to give up. Sol Mudok asks Lennon if he's okay. Lennon says it was a bit risky, but they made it, and laughs. The man laughs and says Lennon is speaking out again. The man says they all saw it, Lennon. He explains it was a crisis, just like back in prison when he dumped Kirk. The man with long hair explains to Gregor that this is a chance for them to start over, and that his usual market is a bit like this, and Gregor laughs and says that he really screwed up. Sol Mudok says they seem to have become more united through the collaboration, explaining that his students suggested it. Two figures walking together are visible against the backdrop of a snowy forest. In the foreground, a close-up of the paw of a large, furry creature is shown. A dark creature with glowing eyes hides behind a tree and growls. The guy is shouting that we need to go there. Sol Mudok tells him not to rush and to approach the trap slowly. The man explains that, if only he could. The image shows a forest with trees and sunbeams breaking through the leaves. The man asks if he heard, and Sol Mudok explains that he is going to fire a few shots and asks to get ready. He attacks his opponents with swift strikes and creates a whirlwind that disperses snow and arrows. In response, arrows fly at him, piercing the air and aimed in his direction. A man with a mask screams. Sol Mudok says he didn't expect to meet anyone here. He says that first we need to take the arrows and inspect other places. Sol Mudok shouts that they're caught in a trap and warns them to be careful. The man explains that it's a trap with poisonous spines and suggests moving slowly to avoid them. Sol Mudok says you need to watch your step and follow him. He says the people of the duchy are no longer afraid of the ice ogres. The armored man explains that this is true and everyone is full of energy. He explains that this is all thanks to the Lord's leadership. Sol Mudok says that everything is going according to plan. Then he asks Jerome to instruct everyone not to act rashly, to which Jerome replies that he understands, Lord. The boy screams and breathes heavily, standing in the snow next to the staff. The man asks if they are still studying monsters other than ogres and wyverns, and Sol Mudok explains that some more information needs to be systematized. A man is surprised that all the objectives were achieved and asks what happened. Another man explains that everyone survived but was seriously injured and is being treated in a hospital. Sol Mudok asks what's going on, Osborne. The man says they have a problem, and he asks if it's a problem. The man explains that a monster has appeared that is different from the ice ogre. Sol Mudok says it's a monster. He says that two of those who went with him to investigate the monster activity were attacked by this monster. The man asks if it's definitely not an ogre. He explains that it's a different species. He asks for clarification. The man explains that the monster's entire body. Sol Mudok says that ogres are about the same size, but this thing seems more intelligent than ogres, and it makes a scream when it does so. The man with glasses asks if he plans to go on his own, and he explains that he needs to act on his own. Sol Mudok says to follow him as soon as everything is cordoned off. The man shouts that there is a powerful snowstorm is raging on the snow-covered mountain slope. Sol Mudok is surprised that if what he says is true, then this monster is someone he knows. Sol Mudok runs forward. The man asks if he is Mr. Magic Swordsman, Baron, Yeti, or something like that, and he laughs and holds up a cup. It is explained that this is an internal view. The guy screams. The man says he found it. Two people walk on a slippery surface, their steps accompanied by sounds. Sol Mudok screams and raises his sword, surrounded by icy energy. He strikes with his sword, surrounded by a whirlwind of energy, heading towards an opponent with horns and glowing eyes. The monster screams. Sol Mudok delivers a powerful blow surrounded by icy energy. He screams while attacking the enemy, who gets wounded and falls. Sol Mudok says the attack failed because the big guy is fast and he's pretty sure now that he's seen him. The beast roars. Sol Mudok screams and fires an energy blast towards the monster. He stands in a snowy forest and holds a glowing sword in his hand. Sol Mudok says the Yeti recently roared and is now acting like a frightened wild cat. The guy says it seems like the enemy sensed his power. Sol Mudok is surprised, asking if he is human. The man remains silent. He explains that out of curiosity he wanted to leave his interlocutor alive, but he cannot spare the one who harmed his people and orders him to be born as a human in the next life. The guy is screaming. Sol Mudok delivers a powerful blow with his sword, causing an explosion of energy and destruction around him. He is surprised that he cannot believe his eyes. Sol Mudok is surprised to see a flash of light and the enemy disappearing just before the strike and wonders what kind of magic it is. The man says for a second that the light is green and then repeats the word green. Sol Mudok explains that when he arrived in this world, Luffy explained to him that warp magic can be used by mages of the 5th level and above, but most don't rise above the 1st or 2nd circle. He explains that the 5th circle is something similar to a spiritual or earthly level, and that it's human-like. He says, what difference does it make? Sol Mudok says he'll still catch him. He says he's so big, but he runs away like a rat and then immediately expresses contempt. Sol Mudok senses someone nearby who couldn't get far even with teleportation, explains that it's within 4 li, and claims that he's definitely somewhere nearby. He is surprised. Sol Mudok stands on a cliff and looks down. Snow is falling around. A rumble is heard. He is surprised and says, "Fu." Sol Mudok is surprised that this is an archive. He is surprised to find himself in the middle of a snowy wasteland. Sol Mudok is surprised and says questioningly. He says that he would at least try to hide and asks what he is doing. Sol Mudok says, "Hey, Yeti," and Yeti asks him not to come closer and explains that he won't kill him so that he can calm down. He is surprised, asking if the person in front of him is a person. The great warrior Haori Kondol says no, he is the great warrior Haori Kondol. Sol Mudok says the warrior Haori Kondol means snowman, lord. He says Jerome is just in time. Jerome explains that there were traces of destruction all around, and only a lord leaves such a trail. Jerome says that this is the destruction of nature. Sol Mudok says he doesn't understand why. The man explains that the Yeti, a descendant of an ancient legendary family, has appeared here and explains that he was just about to ask him about it. Sol Mudok says he is calling Kondol and asking where he came from. He says that he is trying to escape again, but the creature is silent. The monster screams that he doesn't have infinite patience and demands an answer. Mudok stands in front of him. A creature with a blue face and white eyebrows says that the monster screams. Sol Mudok says this is the village of Glack. He says there are many like him there, and the man confirms this. Sol Mudok is silent. He says, explain why he attacked his people, and asks the next question. Sol Mudok says that the answer depends on what he is, and shouts that he did not kill. He explains that he is a great warrior of the Hari, and does not attack people without reason. Sol Mudok says it's true, Kondol. Kondol says he is Kondol. Sol Mudok says that the snowman is not lying, Lord, and explains that, according to his observations, most of them were seriously injured. He explains that if a cure is not found, everyone will die. The man explains that everyone is alive, but wounded and is currently in the hospital. Sol Mudak reflects that, if you think about it, there were no reports of fatalities, although the expression on his face said otherwise. He explains that the people themselves invaded the sacred land, and Kondal drove them away, and adds that he never attacks first. Sol Mudak explains that while hunting ice ogres, they encroached on Yeti territory, and the man confirms that this appears to be true. The text states that Edmund provided false information about Yeti. He tells Jerome to heal Kontal's wounds, and Jerome agrees and explains that he is Kontal. The hand says it will sting a little. Kondal replies that he wants to know what exactly. The man turns to Kondal. Sol Mudak says to show him the sacred land, and explains that he will order his people not to go there again. The character is surprised, asking if this is true. Sol Mudak says the other person is ignorant if he dares to address him informally. The man is surprised and asks what exactly. He says you can't expect anything from someone who can't even speak properly. The man with glasses explains that he's at it again. Sol Mudak says he's finished. He says they're coming. The man with horns turns to him and he asks what else. Sol Mudak explains that he would like to ask for something. The man asks Henry how long it's been since the promised deadline. Henry explains that it's been about 3 months. The man laughs and says that's true. The man remains silent. The man says to Henry. The man says he is Sir Edmund and asks what else. Boy shouts that them end.